This is the Chicago Golf Report podcast, hosted by Walter Liss. Today's guest is media veteran and fleet sales manager at Harris Golf Cars, Steve Olken.
So I'd love to cover three primary topics today, three primary categories. Number one is Harris Golf Cars. Number two would be your career. And then number three is local golf. So could you start maybe with give us an overview of Harris Golf Cars and basically what they do?
Okay, so Harris Golf Cars is a family-owned distributorship for Yamaha golf cars. In business since 1979, owned and operated by the Harris family. A gentleman by the name of Terry Harris back in '79 was first contacted by Yamaha when Yamaha was just starting to come out with golf cars, and it started out in beautiful Dubuque, Iowa. And Terry is about in his mid-80s now and still comes into the office every once in a while, but his son Scott Harris has taken over the business, and it's just a neat business because I've been in golf almost my whole life as far as playing, but a mutual friend of ours, Steve Cashel, worked for Harris Golf Cars some 16 years ago, and he left and went over to Kemper Lakes, and so there was this opening in the Chicago area. And Steve asked me, he said, hey, you doing anything? You want to get involved in the golf cart business? And I'm like, I don't know anything about golf carts other than riding in them while I'm playing. But it just kind of, worked out that way. And I met with Scott Harris and, we connected pretty well. And it's over 15 years now that I've been with this company. So it's great. And Yamaha makes, really good golf cars. Actually, they make great golf cars. And so it's a fun, kind of an entertaining and industrial type of business to be involved in.
I think the golf cars are one of those things that golfers take for granted, but without the golf cars, there's not a lot going on, especially now. I think everybody's become accustomed to the importance of that. Can you talk about the courses that you work with? You work with a ton of courses in the area. It's really important that Harris Golf Cars is keeping everything going.
Oh, no doubt. Golf cars really are, and again, I always say golf cars, and everyone calls them carts. But within the business, we always say you push a cart and you drive a car. So so we say we have fun with that. But first of all, golf cars are the lifeline to golf courses. Obviously, courses have to have them. As much as we like talking about walking and getting some exercise and being involved from that standpoint. Golf cars are really the bloodline for golf courses. They generate the most revenue really for golf courses. And so it's vitally important that we take care of our customers. If there are any service issues, any down golf cars, we don't want our courses to have down golf cars because that's losing revenue for them, So, we have a terrific service department at Harris Golf Cars, and we take care of all of our customers. We have a lot of public, private courses throughout the Chicagoland area. Plus, we have stores up in Wisconsin. We're in Sturtevant, Wisconsin, and out in Blair, Nebraska. Now we've kind of branched out a little bit in the main headquarters of the Harris family in Dubuque, Iowa.
So I know for a while, and maybe this is still true, but there was certainly significant supply chain issues that were pushing back the availability of golf cars. Where do we stand right now with that?
Yeah, it's throughout the industry, doesn't really matter the manufacturer. There's still a waiting list, we can say, to get new golf cars. In the past, pre-pandemic, you can order golf cars in November and you'll have them at your golf course in March. That was just a nice turnaround. Unfortunately, now because of the chips that have been going into golf cars, same as our automobiles, there's been that shortage. Obviously, the COVID really hurt from a labor standpoint. And so most manufacturers are now still anywhere from a year to 16 months out to acquire a new fleet of golf cars. It's getting better. I will have to say it is getting better, but we're still on that type of time frame.
I've noticed that a lot of courses now, they lead with golf cars. So for example, we have a new fleet of cars and we have the highest level in terms of the seats, the sound, the everything. It just seems like it's getting better and better. And with that, then comes the expectation from the golfers like, no, I want the cars that I saw at the last course. How do you see that as being from the course perspective? Are they looking to you to say, hey, what do you got that can make us even more important?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point that you talk about, because everyone is trying to say, hey, I was at this course and they had these type of golf cars, and I really would like your course to have this type of golf car. So yeah, it's kind of a juggling act a little bit, but we try to provide all the options that are possible. So whether a course is looking for gas cars or electric golf cars, whether they want the upgraded seats, they want them looking good, they want GPS systems in the golf cars. So there's just an array of options that they can go with, and it's all dependent really on their budget. I mean, what do they want? What can they afford? Whether they're going to lease the golf cars, whether they're going to purchase them. So there's just a lot of different financial and a different type of assessments and accessories that they want on the golf carts. Yeah.
I think as I'm thinking about your career, looking back on it, like you said, you didn't really have a background in golf cars when you started, right, but your career actually lends itself perfectly to it, because you basically are a man of the people, right? Your career in media, like you said, you were a golfer, and that's the most important component. You had to learn, I'm sure, all the components of the golf car and dealing with the customers and everything. Can you talk a little bit about your career pre-Harris Golf Cars?
Yeah, I mean, I had a tremendous radio career. It started when I graduated NIU in 1983. And, I stayed in Chicagoland, and worked in Joliet for 3 years from 85 to 88, where I really honed in on a lot of skills, a lot of play-by-play, a lot of anchoring, sportscasting, sports reporting, talk shows. Got a break in 1988 when Westinghouse bought WMAQ Radio, and they were looking for a weekend anchor, and I auditioned and thankfully, knock on wood, got that, and that kind of evolved into full-time and talk shows. And the decade of the 90s was great because we had the broadcast rights for the Bulls, and so I was involved in all 6 of those wonderful championships in 1988 and the 90s. So that was a wonderful decade. Got to be involved in that, and hosted Phil Jackson's radio show for 3 years, which we would need another hour to talk about. And then I got hooked up with ESPN Radio, and then The Score from 1999 to 2019. I was at The Score for 20 years. So, and talking golf was just my passion as well. And the last 10 years I was at The Score, it was again, a mutual friend of ours, Ed Sherman, and I hosted The Scorecard. And every Saturday morning during the golf season, we were just talking golf, and had some great guests, and learned a lot about the game from the guests we had, and lessons. And so it was a wonderful run, believe me.
It's really a fantastic time. It was such a fantastic time, like you said, with the time in radio, right, where it was just so popular. It was it's probably hard to describe for younger generations to understand, like the importance of the on-air guests and how much everybody, that's all we had. So when we're in our cars, we're listening to you nonstop, and we learn various people and their personalities and whatnot, and a lot of inside info. Like, talk a little bit about The Score when you were there, because it was just, it seemed like that was the central point of the sports universe for sports fans.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, and I think it still is to this day as well. I mean, I was just driving my car this morning, and just instinctively put on 670 AM, to hear what was going on, what was the talk. Baseball starting, so that was the hot topic of conversation. But yeah, I mean, if you're a sports fan and you want to know what's going on, you want to get the latest news, you want to hear what's the top stories in sports, you just go to The Score. I mean, and in my opinion, I mean, obviously there's another radio station, there's ESPN 1000, and and I'll flip around a little bit just to kind of get an idea of what they're talking about. But yeah, I mean, and still popular today. You still want to get their reaction. You still want to hear what the fans are saying. You want to hear what the hosts are saying, what their spin is on certain stories. But yeah, I just think that in the 90s and the 2000s and the heyday, depending on where you're at in the season, you want to get that information, and you want to hear what your fellow fans are talking about from that perspective. Yeah, it was a wonderful time, and it still is.
I'd love to get your reaction on three different names that are kind of collected to that point. And it could be dangerous because I don't really know what your feelings are, but
Okay.
I believe you had mentioned
Unrehearsed.
you started out and you got an opportunity to work for Steve Dahl. And I grew up, I've always been such a huge fan of Steve, and I probably spent more time listening to him as I drove to and from in the car than anybody else. Can you talk a little bit about how did that happen and what was that experience like?
Well, I was an intern at WLS Radio in 1981, in the summer of '81, when my good friend Les Grobstein, may he rest in peace, he got me an internship in that time frame, and I was a sophomore. I was in between my sophomore and junior year at NIU, and it was magic. I mean, it was just magic. I was able to work in all different departments for those 3 months. And part of that was I think I was with Steve and Garry for probably 3 to 4 weeks. And, I got to, be part of that show, and then with them when they did remotes. And it was just an unbelievable experience. If I recall, and I certainly haven't talked to Steve Dahl in some 40 some years. I got along with Garry a little better than I did with Steve. I'll put it that way. I'll be politically correct and put it that way. But it was a lot of fun. And but then I got to shadow Les, and I got to go to some games with Les. And here I am, a 20-year-old kid at 19, 20 years old. And I got to go to Wrigley Field and go to Sox games with Les for a couple of times. And I was soaking it all in, just kind of seeing what he does, how he does it, who he talks to, going down to the locker rooms and actually watching Les and the reporters in action, getting the interviews. And so it was just an incredible work experience that, I will never forget. And every time I used to see Les, I would always kind of, pat him on the back and say, man, thanks. You got me started in this business for better or worse. You got me started in this business. So that was a wonder. The summer of '81 was terrific.
So Les was actually the second person I wanted to bring up, and he always seemed to be the purest form of a sports nut. He seemed to be like, this guy lived and breathed it. Not that all the fans, we felt the same way. Was that true? Is that a fair assessment of him?
Yeah, I mean, sports was his life. That was it. And Les was an amazing, amazing man. He had a photographic memory. I mean, you could give him a date, hey, Les, July 15th, 1983, Cubs and the Reds, go. He'll tell you the temperature. He'll tell you what the wind conditions were. He'll tell you the score, the winning pitcher, losing pitcher, who hit the home runs. It was phenomenal. Just, and Les, his persona was, and he wasn't, this very elegant man and dressed up in a nice clothes, and Les was your schlub. Okay. I mean, he was a schlub, and I say that in the most flattering way. Believe me when I say that. And he had baggy pants and shirts were untucked and his hair was a mess, but you know what? He was just an incredible man. And first of all, he left this earth way too soon, first and foremost. But he was just so much fun to be around. We had such a good time. I would go on his show a lot of time when he was doing the overnight show, and I was covering games at night. And you finish your interviews, you do your stories, you're driving home, and Les would say, "Hey, can you give me a call around 12:15? We'll talk about the game." I'll only have you on for 5 minutes. Well, a half hour later, as we're driving home, but he was the best. He was, and I miss him all the time.
So the final person kind of, to me, is a centerpiece of that time, but also sports talk radio. And that was kind of it seemed to be like he was the guy who helped start it, at least taking it in its format. And that would be Chet Coppock. I didn't know if you had any dealings with him. Did you work with Chet at all?
I did. Chet and I worked together. Yeah. And you talk about a character of characters. Chet was the man. And again, another tragic that fact that he's not here anymore. But one quick story I'll tell you about Chet. Chet and I, we got along and we didn't get along. There was some conflict along the way. But the one thing that we had in common, we both loved the Honeymooners. And so we would exchange Honeymooners trivia back and forth. And that was awesome. I mean, because we both knew the original 39 episodes of the Honeymooners backwards and forwards. We'd watched them all 50 times. And so any episode that we can come up with, he would say, "Stephen, my friend, I got a question for you. Let's see. When Ned Norton says a string of polo ponies, what do you think he meant by that?" And so we'd just go back and forth. So that was fun. Yeah, Chet and I, when I was at ESPN and Chet was still doing A1000 work, we worked together. Again, a lot of times there was some confrontation, but it wasn't nothing serious, just good-natured fun. But yeah, Chet was fun to be around. His nickname to me was OGB. He called me Olk's good buddy. Olk's good buddy. How you doing, my friend? Yeah, that was great.
That's so wonderful because, as a listener, I always felt like those two people that we've talked about, not including Les, but Steve Dahl and Chet, couldn't be easy to work with. It sounded like that was the case, but for the listeners, it was just magic. So let's segue into golf and local golf, Chicago golf. Being Chicagoan, you've had your finger on the pulse of it. What do you love about Chicago golf? What do you tell people who come in and say, "Oh, what's so unique about Chicago golf?" What's the first things that come to mind?
I would just say, the difference in the courses. I mean, you can go and play, pretty flat courses. There's a lot of slope in a lot of these courses in the Chicagoland area. One in particular that comes to mind real fast as far as really getting some up and down play is Big Run Golf Course out in Lockport. I don't know if you've had a chance to play Big Run, but I mean, you talk about, slope, you talk about distance, you talk about trying to be as accurate as possible. I mean, it's a really old 1920s type of golf course. So there's tree lines and it just goes up and down. And the greens were fast when I played there last summer. And so there's the variance, I guess you could say, of the hundreds of golf courses that we have in the Chicagoland area. Like I say, go to Cog Hill, go play Dubs, go play the other 3 other 18-hole courses they have. You can play some pretty nice mile flat courses. Steeplechase and Mundelein is one of my favorite tracks to play. Schaumburg Golf Club, the full renovation they did just 4 or 5 years ago, and beautiful 3 9s they have at Schaumburg. So it's just you have a choice, you have a variety of wonderful 18-hole, 9-hole courses in our area, and we're really blessed, really, in the Chicagoland area to have so many choices and so many different eyes that we can look at. So we're very lucky here. We really are.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I think this is a fun question that I like to ask people all the time. If you were going to put 4 people on the Mount Rushmore of Chicago golf, who comes to mind?
You mean as far as owners or operators or golf courses? Or
it could be it'd be individual people, and it could be in any realm. It could be a golfer, it could be a golf course owner, it could be an instructor, anything like that.
Oh wow. Oh, you are putting me on the spot here, my friend. Well, the first name that came to mind would be, first of all, the Jemsik family. Frank Jemsik, Joe Jemsik prior, but Frank Jemsik and Catherine Jemsik at Cog Hill. They would have to be on the Mount Rushmore of Chicagoland golf, I would think. Wow. instructors. God, there's so many wonderful instructors, so many Illinois PGA pros that that's really hard to even define. I mean, there's just so many guys. And if I started mentioning names and left some out, they'd be really upset with me, especially if they're clients of mine. So I got to be really careful with that. You know, like I say, the Jemsick family is great. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Can we do another session later on this summer?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, and the reason why I bring it up, because I love to have that discussion, but one of the names that to me is just that I think maybe you haven't thought about is Chick Evans, just because 1930, but just the impact alone of what he did and how we're getting on 12,000 students with the Evans Scholarship Program. It's just remarkable. Like, if you want to talk about a legacy, it's really hard to think about anything that could ever be more impactful than that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, I was thinking more modern, you know, personnel that I you know, am situated with and acquainted with. But yeah, I mean, Chick Evans and the Evans Scholarship, what the Western Golf Association does every year. The fact that they are able to get so many, you know, tens and 20s, hundreds of students going to school that would never have that opportunity to go to college without having the Evans Scholar. And you know, so many guys that I think you and I are acquainted with and know that were Evans Scholars, and they got that break, they got that opportunity. You know, they were caddies and they were able to apply, and they garnered such a wonderful 4 years of college that they would never have, more than likely would never have that opportunity to go to school without the Evans Scholar. So yeah, Chick Evans, definitely, no question about that.
So I'm going to finish up with two really big names, possibly the biggest names in all of sport. When I interviewed Steve Skinner a couple months ago, he talked about how he transitioned from being an attorney to getting in the golf business, and that bridge that got him across was working for Michael Jordan and Michael Jordan Golf Company. Have you had any interactions with Michael? I'm sure you did during the championships, and specifically around golf.
You know, not really around golf, but, you know, certainly throughout all those years with the Bulls, had a really good working relationship with Michael. You know, the one story I'll actually never forget involved my son. He was 5 years old and he had just broken his arm. He was in a cast, and I had my wife and my son at a Bulls game, and we're walking underneath the United Center, and we're walking one way and Michael's coming the other way. And Michael's, you know, kind of looks down and stops and goes, "Hey, what happened?" And, you know, I said, "Oh, you know, Jeremy broke his arm." And so we get a Sharpie, and Michael said, "Well, let me sign a cast." So Michael signs his cast. In the meantime, this is pre-cell phones, right? And so, you know, I'm kind of signaling my wife, "Hey, get your camera, get a picture of Jeremy and Michael." And so my wife's kind of fumbling for her purse and she can't find the camera. And Michael's like, "All right," you know, taps my son on the head. "All right, you take care of yourself. All right, thanks, Mike." And starts walking away. Of course, my wife then found the camera. So a couple of seconds late. But no, Michael was great. We had like I say, we got along well. Used to see him obviously after many games and many championships, and that was great. You know, obviously never had a chance to play golf with him. Would love to someday. Michael, if you're watching, play golf with you. And Steve Skinner, you know, you talk about the Mount Rushmore of golf. You know, obviously, you know, Kemper Sports based right here in Chicagoland area in Northbrook, and what Kemper Sports and the management company that company has, not just in Chicago but worldwide. I mean, you would have to consider, you know, Kemper Sports and Steve and everybody there. I mean, that's what they've done for golf and how they're promoting the game and generating the game to not just, you know, from our demographic, but trying to grow the game and getting the kids involved in so many youth programs they have. That's another good pick for the top of the mountain.
So the final question for you, in the obviously the biggest name in all of golf, Tiger Woods. There is a connection with Tiger with behind you perfectly. is obviously he had that great run with the Western Open and winning all the times there. He also had a bit of a foray in, hopefully, maybe one day, the redesigning Jackson Park with his firm. We'll see. So what are your thoughts on Tiger? Any, when you're in media, coming across and in dealing, I'm sure all the times that you and Ed Sherman were talking about golf, Tiger probably came up at least every other episode. What are your thoughts on Tiger and the legacy and your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he still moves the needle. Tiger Woods is playing in a tournament. I would imagine that the ratings skyrocket. Not like a regular tournament, not the Masters or a major, but if Tiger was playing in a regular tournament, go straight up. As you can see, I kind of admire the guy. I didn't like all the off the course escapades that he was involved in with his ex-wife and everything else. That was very, very unfortunate. But I mean, I'm just a huge fan, man. It's just, he's just such a cool dude to watch and admire and appreciate. And I don't, I would hope that during that unbelievable run, during the Tiger Slam and everything else, that people were able to appreciate and understand the accomplishments that this individual had. I mean, are we ever going to see it again? My guess is no. We're never going to see anyone just dominate. I mean, absolutely dominate. We've seen guys now, Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm and all these guys. I mean, we're seeing them win consistently, but nothing, absolutely nothing like we saw Tiger from 1999 to 05, 06, 07, somewhere in there, where he was just, he was winning in such an unbelievable percentage. And golf tournaments are really hard. They're really hard to win. It's the hardest thing to do in all of sports, is to win for 4 days, not 3 days, not like the other tour, but to win a 4-day, 72-hole event. And for Tiger to do that on such a consistent basis, all those years, unbelievable. And so again, I think we need to all kind of step back and maybe even have our younger golfers go to YouTube and start, watch and admire. Hey, I don't know if you remember Tiger back in the day, but you should take a look at some of this footage because it was incredible, and we may never see it again.